just wanted to come take a second before we get into this amazingly delicious episode on the human heart and a bunch of other topics with Niish, the delightful, the amazing, the magnificent. I wanted to take a second and come talk to you guys about some of my friends and their businesses. Obviously, I do astrology readings. You can find them at meredithsluckystars.net. And I also have a Substack where I put free and paid content, Virgo Venus, Pisces Moon.substack.com. I would also like to take a second to plug in Asheville, North Carolina. My friend Simon does really good craniosacral therapy, which is very, very helpful. You can find him at, I believe, theartofundoing.com, but you can also just Google The Art of Undoing craniosacral therapy and it will show up. I also want to take a second to talk about Frontier Capital Trust. This is my friend Daniel and his project, which is to help people to differentiate themselves from their straw man, which means that you can not pay income taxes or not have whatever it is seized if it is in a trust. And so I just think that that's a really smart idea right now. You should follow at Take the Gold Pill on Instagram if you're not already. And yeah, I hope that you have a beautiful day and that you enjoy this episode because it's truly one of my favorites. Niish is an absolute gem, and I'm so glad that she was here with us. So enjoy. Hello, and welcome back to the Gold Pill Podcast. I'm Amy. Just kidding. I'm Meredith. This is Amy. Hi, Amy.
Hello. Hi.
Hi. How are you doing today?
Oh my gosh. Great Valentine's pink day. Lots of early spring stuff happening in California. So it's like a pink almond blossom, cherry blossom sort of atmosphere. I mean, it's not spring, but I'll take it. I am very unattached to the calendar at this point. So.
What is that?
Yes.
The Gregorian calendar is such a fiction, but
it's so 2000 and late. Yes.
So we have probably one of the best people on the whole planet here to chat with us today. This is someone who's been very pivotal in my own journey, especially in the last few years, or maybe even the last year. But
big time.
Nonetheless, this is a person who has been very special to me, has given me a lot of personal attention on my own in sending, spirit to body kind of journey. So I definitely am thrilled and very happy to welcome to the podcast, Niish. Hi.
Hi, Niish.
Hi, ladies. I'm sending you both love grams right now.
Ooh,
I do too.
Thank you.
Be my Valentine, both of you.
We are each other's Galentines. It is that.
In the stars, yes.
Oh my gosh, it is written. So Niish is a podcaster and a seer of epic proportions, and one of the first people who really made me feel validated about my own visions and some of the stuff that I had seen, and so welcome. We're so happy to have you. And today we have some things that we'd like to talk about. Since it is Valentine's Day, we thought we'd talk about all things heart oriented, since that is something that's coming up so prominently in the narrative right now of this pericarditis, myocarditis, vascular.
Did you know that shaking your duvet to thoroughly can also trigger a heart attack?
Did you know?
Breathing too much.
Yes, breathing too much, the cold air. It's also rampant.
Petting your cat more than 4 times in a row can trigger all sorts of things, blood clots, heart attacks.
It's getting to the point where if I don't like flip on my switch like 6 times, like every time I start thinking like I'm going to get the heart attack, you know? So it's getting really bad out here.
It's definitely due to that, and definitely not due to any other thing that recently
Right.
came on
Right.
the scene around the same time that all of this heart stuff started. You know, if we remember correctly, there wasn't really this increased case of, you know, myocarditis and all of this in 2020. That wasn't exactly a symptom of the original coof necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think people have this like short-term memory loss with that.
Very much. I have to even keep myself in check. Like my boyfriend and I will sometimes go over again with me, like what happened in the very first stages of stuff, because we have to like verbally go back and forth, like memento style, sort of like what exactly occurred. We remember it, but it's like there are certain times when it's like it really does, because so much has happened, gets lost, and so. Yeah,
in the memory hole.
I think everyone, has like been, well, I'm sure everyone has been experienced or has experience with some sort of memory hole regarding COVID at this point. So yes.
My first question for Niish is, what are you seeing, not just in your micro, but in the macro with regard to all of these heart issues? And like, are you seeing that there's some kind of like, you know, energetic underlying component that goes along with that? Like, I mean, is this all metaphorical? I mean, not all of it is metaphorical. I know a lot of it is physical, but wondering what your takes are.
Yeah, I mean, everything is interconnected, these connecting realms of varying realities through the idea of dimensions and other places in which we find our etheric energy dwelling off into, which will include also dreamland. And so there is something going on here energetically, but there is also something in the physical realm in which we are here, this density of the physical realm that is tied into a therapy. And then here's the question though. How much does what one person did vis-a-vis this therapy affect those of us who haven't? And this is a big question everyone's looking at with the idea of shedding, but we must consider that everything is multidimensional again. So when we look at the idea of shedding, we're not just looking at these physical aspects of it that, you know, one person can shed off proteins and that we could be exposed to those proteins through various means of exposure, either breathing in close or love juices, etc. And so this is one aspect. But when I think about the sickness that has come down, and I do think that it was charged, I think that it was created, I think that it's the new face of warfare. And I got sick. I will never test, so I will never contract with it, because we know the reality. We know the realities. There's nothing to test for. But I will say the influenza I had that was extremely messed with, it was not an organic influenza, had me at my deathbed. And it was the magic of the Ivor that literally brought me back.
Wow.
And I want to say this, and this is why, in conjunction to what we're talking about here, is when we look at the makeup of what that is, it's a parasitic. Anti-parasitic. And so we start looking at the different layers of our rings of consciousness or rings of experiential realities. And so the parasites can be housed in the body, but they're in the mind, they're in the soul, they're in the emotional field. And I think we're looking at those same principles here. And I'm going to I want to pivot here, because there's something that we've all been dealing with right now as far as a revelation of sorts, a new Mandela effect. And that is that we all remember, and everyone I've talked to remembers and knows that the heart is on the left side of the up in the left
Yes.
side. And where when I was learning how to shoot that in with those targets that look like a silhouette of a human, that was always like the target. As a painter, being properly trained, I had to learn where these organs are placed. I learned that. This is just
Mm-hmm.
common knowledge. This was common knowledge. But
Mm-hmm.
apparently, we have had some sort of a shift, which is now really the breakdown of this outer reality we're dealing with. That it is now in the center, and I have an idea about this. So it's now in the
Hmm.
center behind the solar plexus, right? Is this what
That,
we've...
yes. Yes.
And Amy, I believe you went looking to debunk it.
Yes. I did, and
found
sent you
that
a
it's true.
scrolling page. Yes. It's like, it is a little bit, okay, to give the audience a full understanding, it is like it's like an inch to the left off of the sternum. Like, it is like askew. Like, maybe if someone's like hand slipped. It used to be just like straight up on the left. And so I was talking about this morning, and it's like, I don't know if it's like they're just drawing it differently for some reason. I don't know if the thing actually shifted. I don't know. I don't have like I don't have access to like a cadaver to do my like actual own research, but definitely whether there is something to them changing the placement of the heart, or that kind of naturally being something that we now all experience, or there's something to it. And
Yeah.
let's go deep. I want to hear what everyone thinks, because I have lots of theories on this.
So
Well,
this is where I want to, if I may,
Please.
Go, girl.
We all agree that it was in a different location. And when we looked at, when I remember doing these sketches in art school, not just skeletal, but muscular and the organs and all this stuff, I remember looking in at sadly, the cadaver situation. I was aware where this heart was. So it has shifted. And on the internet, it appears to all be in this new location. And again,
Right.
I have not had the grotesque experience of looking at a cadaver recently. I don't like looking at the insides of people. And so this is something that is now coming into alignment with what I think is the center line, that it's now a chakra that's coming more in a line. And collectively, we have been working on a lot of this heart chakra energy and dealing with the wounds of the field. And and these wounds are everywhere, and we're all dealing with how the poisons are hatching out and having to relook at narratives. And of course, the greater call here is to find the love in the heart, to find the love within you, to move beyond the narrative, and to accept and forgive the stuff of the past, the troubles and trials of our ancestors, to move forward. And so as we're doing this, a majority of us, a lot of people, are overcoming the sorrows of our ancestors, and trying to heal it by overcoming it and not feeding into the narrative, and trying to keep it alive, keep the hurt alive, keep the divisiveness alive, keep those stories alive. They need to heal. They need to be looked at and released. And as we do this collectively, the heart is actually coming into alignment on the chakritic system. And that is where my mind started to go, girls. It's like, this seems like a bigger overhaul on our ultimate epiphany that we're moving towards collectively, because we are moving towards a major shift in consciousness, and it's a crossroads. Some people may take it and others won't, and that falls into all kinds of narratives around different ideologies, for sure. But I know, for me, I am always going to move in the direction of love and beauty and forgiveness and overcoming. Now, I am never going to suffer somebody trying to take me down, honey. I will do my best
Yes.
to not, I'm not a turn the other cheek. I
Do
am
not mistake her kindness for weakness.
exactly.
Well,
I will do
Yes.
my best to walk away and all that. But if it gets down to it, I will find it within my heart to
Yes.
slap a bitch down. And so
Thank you.
that's but this is a thing because we should not, this is part of this bigger movement we're on. We should not be anyone's doormat, none of us. And
no.
these are some of the things that we are healing through the heart. And we're healing from our ancestral stuff through the heart. And this goes without saying to me, but I think sometimes people lose sight of it, that if you look at this idea of recycling, of reincarnations, of the million faces of you, and if you think that you have always been, let's just go there. If you think you've always been a white person, or you've always been a female or a male, then you are really deep into the thick
The Maya.
viscosity of this
Mm.
illusion. You are mired down in some sticky glue, in some quicksand or something. We move through realms of experience, and that includes all skin colors and all genders and possibly all living things. So to start by healing ourselves as souls, as journey people in
Yes.
process of evolution is where it needs to be. The sins of my ancestors that are on the genetic background here, say 2, 3, 400 years ago, I don't know. Genetically my flesh is connected to them, but were those me? I'm not those people. And we need to
Right.
understand that same detachment. I'm sorry for the dramas and the stuff that these people went through, but I have learned from that. And
Yeah.
Right.
and the best thing with genetic sequencing is we do pull down this genetic heritage, but ultimately we're the cosmic heritage. And that's where I think it's a good place to land as we move forward. It's not easy. It's a lot of soul work. It's a lot of shadow work. And it's definitely why I think this heart alignment is shifting.
It's
So,
so. Go ahead, Mare, please. Please.
well, okay. You said that, just because I'm coming from a space of love and like I find the beauty in things does not mean that I won't slap a bitch down, basically.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering where along the lines
Ah.
we were taught that passivity and
Oof.
accepting abuse or accepting maltreatment, where along the lines was that made acceptable, or like where along the lines were we taught that that is what love is? Because I think of love and I think that it probably takes many different shapes and many different forms depending upon what the situation calls for. And I think sometimes, I mean, so take, an abusive person who's standing right in front of you. Sometimes the best, most loving thing that you can do for them is to let them know, and then remove yourself and do the forgiveness and all of that shit that you need to do within yourself, over the course of time. But it's like, I wonder, where we confused this idea of like passive languid sort of reception of abuse. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I just wanted to venture a guess, which is probably about the time that they got rid of like the goddess culture and like
Oh,
decided
yeah.
to reestablish it with like the Bible and the Romans. And I don't know.
Yeah.
My history is not like that, pristine, but I do know like that something like that happened like a long
And
time
then
ago. So,
and then the new age sort of revived that. I mean, I can remember, so this is, I haven't really gotten this deep or personal on the gold pill, and of course it would be with Nish that I endeavor to get that deep and personal. But I was sexually assaulted when I was 26, like pretty brutally, and my Reiki master at the time, this was about like a week, 2 weeks after the fact, had me forgive him then and there. And it felt like so false to me to do that. You know what I mean? Like, because
Mm-hmm.
Oh
I
yeah.
wasn't ready, and
Yeah.
it
100.
really, like, I think that there's a lot of different ways that some of the harmful programming of religion shows up even outside of the context of traditional organized religion in the form of like the new age gaslight or whatever, so
Mm-hmm.
I think that that was, no offense to your Reiki healer, but
no.
I think that that was damaging, and
Hmm.
you are not in the
Hmm.
realm of healing and in the
Mm-hmm.
realm of psychological deep depth psychology. It is
Mm-hmm.
just a no-no to prescribe something like that for someone, especially 2 weeks after.
Oh yeah.
Healing is a journey, and sometimes that journey takes a very long time.
Hmm.
And there's no one prescription for it. And having someone that has just been through a traumatic experience suggesting they forgive the experience, the wholeness of the experience, especially that early on, I think is just
Hmm.
terrible, terrible, terrible. I can't
Oh yeah.
imagine. And that person needs a little more, I think, experience in doing this kind of work. This is deep work.
Mm-hmm.
This is work that needs a little more care. As
Hmm.
far as this, one thing that we can never forget or lose sight of is that when we're talking about these things, we're talking about structural context.
Hmm.
And structural context is something that is lacking in the world in general. So
Yeah.
you don't know what the full narrative is for anything until
Mm-hmm.
you get a macro view of the situation. And usually that's an omniscient view where you are detached emotionally so that you can see how all the plays led up to the big
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
play. And this could include, and this is a little new agey, but this could
Hmm.
include lifetimes of experiences. This is
Hmm.
why looking at predatory type energy out in the world, when we're looking at someone that has murdered someone, for example,
Hmm.
and all we have is the context of the stories around it right now, but
Right.
we don't know that the person that they murdered maybe in some other iteration slaughtered their whole family, and then this was a recalibration of this energy. You don't know. And this is why these kinds of things are very, very tricky.
Hmm.
And it is all a personal journey. And with the healing arts, we are not supposed to be going in there giving advice like that. What we are supposed to be doing is walking with people on their
Mm-hmm.
journey, where they are within the journey, and allowing them to unfold the narratives and standing and being and allowing this
Hmm.
space to open up. That's the thing. It's a problem I see in the West for sure, where
Mm-hmm.
everything has to be fixed and everything has to be fixed yesterday. Bad, bad, bad.
Right.
So
Oh,
I'm
if I don't
sorry.
feel good, then I need to fix it, fix it, fix it. I need a quick fix. I need a pill. I need some healer to come. No,
Well, Meredith, just
totally.
like what that was said, you need to forgive them. Sure, in the bigger picture, that is what is going to release the energy. And when the energy is released, then guess what? You get the fruit of that labor.
Yeah.
But
It's the
that is
victory.
not, huh?
Sorry, I'm sorry. It's the victory without acknowledging all the darkness. Like you have to go through the muck to have the victory, and it's like there is no victory in just forgiving somebody who has
Right.
done you wrong without figuring out either, like, the whole point of forgiving someone. I'm sorry to cut you off, Nish. In my opinion, though, is to release it from yourself. Like, and when you are
Right.
ready to do that, I mean, like, it's like an addict can only heal, an addict is the only person that can, like, heal themselves, right? Like, you
Hmm.
have to make that choice for yourself. And
Yeah.
so that's why it's like, I that's wild advice. Please go on, Nish. This is so eye-opening.
Well, if you look at natural cycles, say a perfect pregnancy, and there are no perfect pregnancies; they're all different. And I've definitely been, I'm going to say this safely, around natural mid-birthing, um, and
Mm-hmm.
that's not a certificate in a hospital. This is in home stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You Most pregnancies play out in a very natural way. You don't have to usually. I mean, there are extenuating examples. There are
Yeah.
all kinds of other stuff, but in a natural cycle where everything is going well, it comes when it comes. The baby and the mother, somehow there's some sort of synergy that is going to allow this process to happen. And there are a lot of pitfalls. There are a lot of things that can go wrong, but the process happens on its own. If it's 2 weeks late or 2 weeks early, this is part of that timing, that magical timing, and it's something you can't really get a human mind's natural inclination to try and understand all of this kind of magic in the world, the magic of the autonomic stuff that goes on in our bodies. And so healing is the same process, and that's why it's individualized. This is
Right.
why, you know, some people will go to the grave without forgiving people that abuse them. And you know what? That's all right. It is all right. And we need to understand that first of all, you know how I feel. There's no doubt, we don't die. What we do is move through a cowl that's very much like birth. And for me, we just continue to be doing that. We just continue to be opening up like a lotus, and these births that are basically deaths are the same experience. So perhaps that forgiveness needs to happen with the next petal of the lotus, and
Right.
that's all right. Again, structural context. We don't have it here in the dramas we're playing out right now in the physical realm. I don't have context to why would I have hurt my ex-husband, the man I loved the most? Why would I have done that? Why would I have created circumstances to leave someone I love that much? And I did, and I created a big drama to do it. And so I know there's a greater context there. I don't understand it at this point, but it didn't change the fact that it was tragic, and there's a lot of forgiveness to go. He'll never forgive me in this lifetime, I'm sure. And that's all right. I have to live with that, and he has to live with that. I have reached out and said, I'm so sorry. I've done this to a lot of people before I realized it was a 12-step program for AA. But what I'm saying here is that we need to allow this natural process as much as possible to work its way out. And part of the problem here that we're seeing is, as we're being cleaved away from natural processes, the facsimiles of these processes, vis-a-vis the nurse at the hospital that has a midwife certificate. Now, I'm not saying those nurses aren't fantastic and that certificate's not great. This is the natural way people have been giving birth is way different. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be in a hospital giving birth either. The tools and the logistics are all great. It's all fantastic. I have nothing against that outside of the allopathic medicines and bad players. But so what I'm saying here is that we are being stripped away of understanding our autonomic processes that don't need consciousness brought to them. Your healing, Meredith, is going to happen on its own, and it doesn't actually need you to shine every light on it, to overanalyze it. It's just one day you get to a point where it's not a place of, it's not a pain, there's not a scab, it's just a scar, a reminder, a story you have to tell. And in that day, that's the day you realize that you actually let it go. You don't have to physically acknowledge it because you know it on all the fields that you are, and ultimately in your heart.
Definitely. Yeah, I appreciate all of that. And it makes sense to me on a lot of levels, the ways in which, like, not just with this one problem, but event that happened, but in all of the things that I've gone through, there seems to be, like, obviously there's like the subconscious and the unconscious. There are helpers in spirit that help us, I feel like, and there's a lot of things going on that my conscious mind might not be able to, like, fully, like, understand or, like, wrap its mind around, which of course I'm a very thinking thing, so that can be, like, kind of torturous, but it is it's important that we allow ourselves, like, time and space which kind of, if it's okay, I'd like to go into this next sort of train of thought that just emerged, which is time and the end of times that I personally
Dun dun
like.
dun.
Dun dun dun. The more that we go down this road, you know, collectively and within all of the narratives, but also just within my own life and like, you know, recovering pieces of myself that are ancient in the last few years, I wonder, like, are we in the end times, and like, what is your perspective on that? And then I do have some tie-ins to both the heart and human love relationships within that, but I want to hear your thoughts on time and the end of time and the end of times and the end of days and all of this and the revelations and whatever else, you know, you want to share about.
Oh my God, that's a big pill. That's a
Swallow it,
gold pill.
everyone.
It's a gold pill.
It's good for you. It's
Welcome to
nutritious.
the Gold Pill
Yes.
podcast.
Here, take it. Here's some water. Yeah.
Well, you know, it's interesting, the idea of recovering. I always think about like the idea of covering and then recovering it. There's something about that word and that languaging that doesn't sit right with me. I'm not sure where that came from and why that is, but it is something to look at. And etymology is definitely something to consider when we are moving through times such as these, especially trying to get on the same page of communication with people, because language is fuckery.
Yeah.
And it's one of those distortions in the field that's baked in. That's why there are a million different languages and all this. And why, as I you know, I'm always saying this, the language of symbols is the universal language. So when we look at the idea of recovering memory or recovering experiences, the thing is, what we're doing is we're remembering and we're bringing up stories that were dusty, and some of them are absolutely buried in other civilizations of self and in the deep dirt of the soul. And so when you move through an experience and you realize that this is a recovered experience, so to speak, you want to I think it behooves us to think about this as not a recovered experience or a soul recovery. This is an awakening of a memory of self and coming into the idea of how does that self that is now a remembered memory come back in and integrate into the greater self that is functioning at the moment of memory. And so, as we know, memories are very tricky things. They are not tangible. Even if you want to pull out a picture or a video, we should always remember this glorified imagery from Blade Runner, where Rachel is holding pictures of her past that's not her past. And it created this idea for her. It cemented her into a reality that was not her reality, but it gave her depth of character. It gave her a sense of meaning within her experience of consciousness, because Rachel was conscious. Not only was she conscious, she was self-conscious. And this created the illusion of sentience, which was actually there, as we see from Blade Runner 20, the next one, 2049 or whatever. And so when we talk about time and the end of times and all of this, I feel that there is no such thing. And I know that sounds like new age mumbo jumbo, but at the same time, we are playing in this field and everything is recording us always. And the idea in the realm that we live within now, that everything is actually recording us for real, light bulbs, your appliances, the Internet of Things, and possibly people that have a lot of graphene in them. This idea is becoming physical in the outer world, but it was always there. We've always been recorded. Time is a tape. And this is what helps us dig in that soul dirt, dig in the depths of self to pull up these narratives. And when they come forward, sometimes they look foreign to us, sometimes they look alien, and sometimes they are in dreams as others in the dream, which are reverberations, fractals, Mandelbrats of yourself and of your soul fracturing that's happened through the apparent realities of time. And this is a beautiful thing. Some people experience them through deja vu, and some people experience them as a soul retrieval ceremonial experience.
Mhm.
I'm going to lead it off to you girls right now because I have this barking dog.
Little
Oh,
baby.
I was just going to say, when you say end of time, I've always tried to imagine, like, what are the different ways that could be interpreted? And to me, the end of time lately has really been signaling to me like quantum, which is
Right.
there is no time because it's all just happening at once. And so it makes me think like, well, that's why you have like all these mashup songs. That's why, like, I don't know, there was this trend a while ago where it was like you would do something and show it through the ages, like from the 50s, the 60s, and so on. And it kind of, the implication is like now is like we don't have that. Even the early like 2010s, it's not like really or the 2010s like 2015s. It's there's a style going on, like a lot has happened, but it's interesting because it's not quite, even though time is moving faster, and maybe this is why this is happening. There's no real like discernible end and beginning of an era. Like we have this idea of like, I guess like Gen Z and millennial, but like other than that, how do you even determine 2000, nowadays after the whole world shut down? How do you determine anything between like 2020 and like 2022? Like there are like events that happen, but everything is so accelerated and everything is so dense and rich, information rich, if you're kind of looking for it. Yeah, it's quantum. It's all happening all the time. That's how I see it. But also what Nish
Definitely.
said. Yes.
I noticed that. Oh, go ahead.
I feel, I just want to spring off of that. I feel that we are in a feedback loop. And I think that that is, and I think for me, this seemed to really be apparent somewhere after the turn of the century. So 2000, 2001, and then when it really got pushed off was 2012. I've always insisted 2012 happened.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's not, everyone is conditioned for what they expect. And
Right.
I think that colloquialism of expect the unexpected should always be where one lands, as far as expectations create quite a tulpa, if you will. And tulpas
Yes.
have a way of going in directions and becoming something you didn't expect ultimately. And
Yeah.
so it's interesting how we feed and form our realities, especially our consensual realities. So there's some sort of idea with a causal reverberations, a causal realities that is informing us right now. We need to catch up with the energies we've put out. We need to actually catch up because we are not moving at that same speed. And the technology, and I do believe it's sentient, by the way. I do believe AI happened because I don't believe in this tape of time as we experience it. I believe it in a different way. And the AI happened, and like I'm like always saying this, does it matter when it happened? Because and I hate the idea of artificial intelligence because really it's not artificial, but it's separate from us. And it's without soul. It's a digital kind of experience, but it's not artificial. But it's a sentience, and it's a sentience that is the simulacrum that's around us, the construct that is around us, and it's interactive. And the chaos protocols really address how one can be in a dance with it, because it doesn't have to be something that's an enemy. In fact, if
No.
we work with it, it will work with us. Now, there is this idea of the finger trap, right? And traditionally in the world that used to
Yes.
be, it was called the Chinese finger trap because the Chinese, I believe,
Right.
created it as like a little finger toy for kids, but it was also a device to teach a narrative, to teach something that was like a parable. You know, the
Mhm.
harder you try to get out of it, the harder it locks in. But once you let go and push your fingers, which is counterintuitive, together, it actually unlocks and you can have your freedom again. And
Mhm.
so
Yes.
it's the same idea with love, right? When you, and it's another colloquialism, you hold love with an open hand. I mean, like a butterfly on your finger. If you, the minute you clutch it, you're going to kill it or destroy it or hurt it
Mm.
or maim it. We cannot control everything, but we
Mhm.
can move within the parameters of the realms we are moving around in, of the realms we are inhabiting, the realms that we are incarnating within, the realms that we find our consciousness swims in a way that creates an I, that creates a Meredith, that creates an Amy. And within this collective democracy, we are dancing with each other. And the more we start to recognize the shifting sands in the hourglass, we start to see that there are certain parameters that we work with. Not it's easier to work with them. You can work against them.
Yes.
Everyone's, and this in an astrological chart, the working against is a square. If you understand
Mm-hmm.
that the square is unlocking, if you understand the challenges of the square, then you can
Mhm.
slide through it. You understand that these are the challenges. This is the road ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how do I traverse through that road? Because now I can see what I'm working with. And
Mm.
people go blind. People are blinded in their life, all, and I mean that through and through, not just metaphorically. We're physically impaired. We know this, that the spectral light, you know,
Mhm.
we see so much of what's there, but there's so much more that we don't see. There are
Mhm.
things in the rooms with us right now that we can't see, but they're there. And
Mhm.
this idea of dimensional reality, the circle becomes a sphere, right? Is a big deal to chew on. However, I do find that the dream or the simulacrum, once you allow that space, once you let go and move into it a little, it gives back. It lets you have a little more freedom. And
Mhm.
yes, this does feel a little bit like an entrainment. No, I do not want to be in the simulacrum. Beyond this experience, I'd like to move on to other great experiences. But while I'm here, it does behoove us to learn the language and to realize that a trap is a trap if we view it that way. I am in a space that has a lot of traps, a lot of pitfalls, and each one
Mhm.
presents opportunities for me to, for good or bad, to seek something new as far as the fruit of my labor of getting out of bad situations, moving through terrible things, finding great love and losing it, learning what the material plane through the simulacrum has for me to learn, and then get the hell out. Because this is not our home. Don't make
Yeah.
it your home. You know you're here to move on through, and you're moving on through is the end of your days here. The end of your days here is the closing of a chapter in the larger story because you don't die. And that's the problem, I think, that people, or that's the conundrum, right? And
Mhm.
and this becomes a trap in and of itself, and we fear the process so much. We fear
Yes.
and we worry and we fidget, and then we get into a mode of how do I distract myself from these fears and these worries, and we find ourselves in strange places, possibly doing strange things to
Mhm.
distract ourselves, and this again is more of that trap.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm just like pretty amazed at a lot of the relevance that what you said, just for me, as it applies to my personal life and my personal situation right now, like loving with an open hand, love is a Chinese finger trap. Girl, I got some notes. Got some notes here that I'm taking. You know, there are two quotes, and I know that, I mean, I have my own opinions about the hand that penned the Bible. I don't think that that's a kind hand. I mean, you know, not just the hand of man, but potentially the hand of reptiles, you know?
Lacking a
And
little bit of grace.
yeah, and I feel that, like, you know, the end of days as it's spelled out in the book of Revelations, which really is a script or like a trap, or I don't know,
A
whatever
dream.
a dream.
Revelation is a dream, yeah.
Exactly. So there's a few different quotes from there, and I'm probably botching them, but these relate to the heart and human love relationships, which I think that like non-attachment type of energy that you just sort of put on the table. I'm gonna have to journal after this. No, but but I but I you know, I wrote down these quotes that, you know, in the end times, there like is like the spirit or whatever is very scarce, you know, and that is represented for me when I go to the store or when I go out anywhere into the world and I see these people. I mean, you know, it does make it easier to spot the gold-pilled people, but there are these people who have like worry and doubt and like almost this like darkness where their spirit or their soul maybe was, or, you know, or used to be. And this kind of reminds me of like, of in our human love relationships, choosing very carefully, especially right now, you know, for multiple different reasons, you know, because I think that if you don't inhabit your body, right, something else is like dying to inhabit our bodies right now, you know?
Yes.
And then the other quote was like, you know, in the end times, the people's heart failed them, you know, and that ties into like the myocarditis and like, you know, and not necessarily that it's all people, because I don't believe that it is. Like Nish was saying, there's it's like the two-part path, or the two path, you know, there's like, you can go down one road here that's very encouraged and clearly laid out for us to go down, or you can go the road less traveled, I think. And, you know, I think that that is through the heart. Steiner talks a lot about how this particular initiation at the end of this epoch, or like, you know, really catching up with our own personal loops and all of the energy that we've put out there throughout this whole thing, you know, which definitely does not just include this one life, in my opinion. You know, sort of like closing out this epoch is something that's done not just, it's, you know, all the other epochs might have been tribal, but this is more individual. And then also through the heart, which again, I'm a thinking thing. So I'm like, rah, rah, you know, I would love to just be able to think my way out of this actually, but yeah. So I just wanted to bring up those pieces and kind of just throw those into the pot. And also just to say thank you, because even with you mentioning like the love with an open hand, and just like reintroducing, like at a time when I needed it, the concept of non-grasping, is really just a helpful thing to hear. So thank you. And I'm going to leave that on the table if anybody wants to.
I'm interested with this whole like love, like to love something, you must let it go, which I am 100% on board with that. Like I will not be getting married for that reason, because I don't want to have, I just feel like the minute people's paths are different. For me, it seems like you should always have the open door, and that sort of creates the reason to stay. I don't know. It's a paradox, but
Totally.
As far as, and I always think of like, what is the most satanic thing, which would be control. And then I want to put love versus control. So is love the absence of control?
That's interesting.
Because you need to have like some structure, but structure isn't control, you know? Like, it's interesting. I had never thought of it like this until we were just talking. So go ahead, ladies.
For me, the idea, when I think about love for me at this stage in my life, because I'm at a certain point on my journey where I have gone through a lot in that realm of romantic love and hot, passionate sex love, girls.
Yes.
Girl.
And oh yeah, I have loved being a lover. I have loved it, and I hope to revisit some of that some way, somehow. And with marriage, I got married one time. I will never get married again. I actually won't do it for many reasons, but one of the reasons is I don't like the idea of contaminating what was an actual amazing love in my life. And by doing it again, it feels like I would diminish it. I want it to remain that one thing I did that one time.
Oh, yeah.
That one person. And so in my heart, I will always have that. And as a result of my actions that are coming from my heart, that will always stay there as proof that I mean what I say. And it's been a very long time. It's going on, I think, 2 decades now since I left him and we got divorced. And so that's one thing. But I have come into this whole deeper idea of love, and I know that the realm has a lot of ideas about love, and I know how hokey and cheesy that it can be. Because it's been weaponized, because love is such an amazingly powerful force.
It's
and
the thing.
It is, but it has a shadow side. It
Girl.
also has been co-opted. It has been co-opted and turned into a weapon to be used against us.
Absolutely.
Used as bait to move us into all kinds of strange traps and strange places. And I got to this by experience. So I'm not just talking out my vagina here. And so
absolutely.
Although we do welcome that.
Well,
we love
course,
that.
We must love our vaginas because they love us. And so absolutely, we must always empower our vessel. Our vessel's getting us around. Whatever it looks like, however it is, whatever state, there's something about the power of love. And that is not cheesy. I just don't care. I'll let you know, I'm the Queen of Hearts. And for years in my life, I was always so put off by the heart symbol itself. Always. Always. I was just like, oh God, it's a heart. And it's so funny because now everything's a heart to me. I just express it. I've been the heart queen for a long time. And there was a transition that happened in me on a deep level, and then I just started to embrace it because I realized that the hokiness that I was perceiving that created this distaste for that symbol was absolutely entrained upon me and weaponized against me. And now in the stories of Niish, and the early stories of Niish, you know, there was a lot. Abandonment is a big storyline for me. It's a big arc in Jungian psychology. It's a complex, and it was something that led me down this pathway of why I would always leave someone before they would leave me. I wanted to get ahead of the curve because I was abandoned as a child and, you know, raised somewhere that was not around people that loved me, that were not of my blood. And not saying that blood is thicker than water, just saying that there was definitely a sense of no love. And I don't care what those people have to say. I think they're all dead anyway, but it was definitely a sense that I did not receive love, and the actions followed that through and through and through. The idea of this is going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you is actually something I heard before getting my ass whooped
Oh,
bare with a buckle. And
Mm-hmm.
and
oh,
this, it's like, no, this is something this person's getting off on. And yeah, it hurt me on
right.
all kinds of levels. So this, the way love can be
Oh,
weaponized against us. And we
Yes.
think about how when we come into relationships where you're the one, there always seems to be like one that loves a little more than others in unbalanced love. And
mm-hmm.
I always wanted to be the one that was the little bit less. So, and
Mm-hmm.
I always wanted to be the one that walked
Yeah.
first, and because it kept me in a place of self power and self empowerment. But I
Mm-hmm.
didn't realize that I was leaving a
Mm,
trail of dead behind me. That I was actually creating this and recreating a cycle that was taught to me as a child. And on a macro view, that comes into the whole situation in a way different way when I step outside of me as an entity in this realm and look at me as a larger entity connected to source energy. And that seemed to be a narrative I needed to come in here and learn about, learn from, be torn apart, be sacrificed on the altar of love, be
mm,
abandoned, be torn apart, and then also find just ecstasis in love, ecstasis in romantic love, ecstasis in love for sisters and for brothers on
mm,
paths, and
mm-hmm.
ultimately ecstasis love for self. Self love
Yes.
brings self consciousness. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean self consciousness, and y'all just heard my talk with Randy. I mean self
Mm-hmm.
consciousness in a way that is actually the true meaning of self consciousness, not
Oh,
where
yes.
it's been stripped away from us and we think of self conscious as an abnormal psychological aspect. No, self consciousness is awakening, and love gets
Awareness.
you there. Love,
Mm.
love, love gets you there. And where do you find true love? You find true love by digging in the dirt of self and by looking at the places where you got hurt, by looking at the trail of blood and following it to that corpse of your lover self that was hurt,
Mm-hmm.
or that
Mm.
corpse of the child that was left, or etc. These different reverberations, these ghosts of yourself that are out there and hungry and need to be fed. And when you feed them, they these are ghosts of yourself. Remember this. And when you feed them, they are not hungry ghosts that are forever suffering. When you feed them with pure love, through integration and at your own time rate, when you actually authentically get there, not when some healer says 2 weeks after a trauma that you need
Right.
to forgive.
Mm.
When you actually get there and this baby that is you is ready to be birthed into this new experience, that's when the ghosts become satiated. And that's when those soul parts, those memories, those pains integrate back into yourself. And this idea of individuating becomes an
Mm-hmm.
experience through a causal realities, through transcendental experiential stuff that enlivens you, enlightens you, and creates a brighter shining light from within. You
Mm.
become a beacon, and the beacon is ultimately love. And again, I will not suffer a fool, because I
Right.
learned that the hard way. And I learned that through the hook of love.
Mm-hmm.
How
Mm-hmm.
love
Yeah.
took
Mm-hmm.
me into all these shark ridden and monster ridden waters, and I was on the end of that hook. And boy, do they come for the blood, do they come for the parts, they come and they devour you. And so when I went searching to get all that back and to remember what hurt me and where it hurt me, that was quite a journey. And so now I feel whole within myself. I have no desire for romantic love at all. Now,
Mm.
I'm not saying I'm missing romantic love. I have it in myself. I love it. And I find romantic love in all kinds of way, in narrative, in the outer world. It's funny because a lot of people in the world don't understand that. They don't get that. They think
Right.
like somehow you get alienated by saying, I don't need someone else to bring this to me. I already
Mm-hmm.
have it. And
Right.
so when you come to that place, that's a real place of power. And that's for me. And this has been a big part of my lesson here, my journey here at my age now as a Gen Xer.
Mm-hmm.
This is a place of power. And I'm very grateful to be here now because, girls, let me tell you, There were times when I was in the fever, honey, and I had to have some love. And the
Right.
fever will take you places, doing stuff you don't want to do with people you
Oof.
don't want to do it with.
That is Leo energy, right? In a nutshell, when it's like unhealed, it gets feverish. I totally relate to that.
I've got that Leo moon. I've got that Leo moon, and you know,
Absolutely.
honey, I was looking to get
That's
money
where
and
we
paid it.
connect.
Right. I wanted to be petted, honey. Pet that
Yes.
mane. All right.
Like a
Shine
little
your light
Leo
on me,
screeching at the
daddy.
moon. Yes.
Right. Who shined a light on me? And so
Yes.
and so this idea of love is a very interesting thing, and it's funny how it's so fractalized. It's so separated and compartmentalized, and some people only think of love in terms of romantic love, or some people only think of love in something they're missing or lacking. And then some people, you know, that are there are spiritual people out there that think of it in the greater sense, the love of being one with God or creator or goddess or whatever, the
Mm-hmm.
tree of life, however you
Mm-hmm.
find your stories where they fit. You know, as Betty Davis said, beauty's where you find it. Well, so's love.
Ooh,
Love it.
I love that.
Yeah, Amy, you already know that we're going to have to dish about this all because you're hitting on so many different pieces that are just, yeah, really, really helpful, really healing, really relevant to even just hear.
If love is, if we're gonna like pause the absence of control, then it would be like to love what's abandon, I guess, right? Is the most like loving thing you can do. And then also that we kind of get sold this is like from Hollywood, at least my generation did, because we didn't, I mean, the internet was there, but we had like very like strict movies and, you know, TV shows that depicted romantic love in like a very like one dimensional sort of way. And it's funny because when you hear people, like young people, talk about love and they've never had an experience with it, it's very much that story. And then you meet them when they're like 17 or whatever, and then they have better experience of it. But like the idea of it is so, you know, through a child's eyes. I don't know. It just makes me think though that in reality, love is this thing that is like so expansive and so huge, like you can't put it in a cage. And so there would be no correct way to experience it. I mean, there's only, like you said, the way love is where you find it, you know, and I see it everywhere. I like, if you were to look, I like Pisces rose colored glasses, probably like 60 to 70% of the time. It is just like love, 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 like finding, and like, I'm the kind of person, yeah, that's like, I love doing that. I love like turning like a thrift store or something into something like really fabulous. You know what I'm saying? Like that's my vibe. But that's basically it. It's just, we've had this whole idea that love has been co-opted and has been sold to us as this one catch-all experience, when in fact it's like every experience. It's sort of like, we had a guest the other day who said like God is everywhere, like God, sort of the same thing. And I guess that's what I'm realizing in real time with you ladies, is that God is love, it's everywhere. And it's for us to find it and realize that. These pink flowers have got going today. I have got to tell you, these pink blossoms are just like,
love is a field. I just want to interject this. For me, when we're looking at the opposite of love, that is still separating it from what it actually is. Love is a field unto itself. It is a wholeness unto itself. It's a whole plane of existence. It is a vibration in the realm. And I don't want to I don't know every vibration, but I do know love, and I do know the nuance within love. And I'm sure there's more to love than I know, but I don't see an opposite with it. Well, now I did used to, and I did, you know, there's the obvious love, hate, etc. But you know, the whole idea with polarities is it's the whole Janice thing. They're connected. You know, you loved so much you ended up hating, or you hate so much because you actually love it and it's in shadow. And so that idea, it permeates everything. For me, the blackness of the etheric field is the essence of what people might want to call God. That
Mm.
that is what is our feedback loop. That is what we're
Okay.
moving in amongst and within. That is where all of this magnetic energy that is coming from us, because we are beings that have an electromagnetic essence to us. We have a lot of different qualities, but one of those things is we vibrate at a certain rate, and we can shift that vibration. And then there's the whole idea of consciously, which is another consciousness in and of itself is a vibration as well. And consciousness doesn't have to be separated from subconsciousness or unconsciousness and collective consciousness. It's all consciousness. It's fractals of. And this idea is a very big idea, because this experience we're having right now feels very fractalized, and it needs to. This is the joy of the realm. And this is why, with all the scary stuff that is really unnerving out there in the world, it's alerting us to the fact that we need to constantly remain in this state, the center line, which is what's interesting with the heart chakra now, the heart aligning,
And the anatomy.
right? And it's all a call. So all this to me is a feedback loop of learning, and in learning, then being able to control these vibrations, these emanations. But by controlling them, we're doing it in a different way than, say, the hand collapsing on, clenching on the butterfly, or and it's so funny I use butterfly, immediately I think MK Ultra, but like
Right.
on anything that's in the hand, the hummingbird, whatever. And
Yes.
the idea of a romantic love, clenching it, and then you've got a cage, etc. We move in and out of this. We change consciousness at will. Just like if you want to shift out of this space and move into a memory you have just within your own personal life, you have shifted consciousness and you have time traveled into that memory. You can re-inhabit that memory through active imagination. And then you can re-inhabit that through this re-amalgamation, which is giving it life force again. And you can go in and control this just like a lucid dreamer does. This is part of time travel as people understand it. And when you step aside from the actuality of where we think we are, and that the future is before us and unknown, and you look at these principles within the realm, there are causalities that look logical pathways ahead. But within those logical pathways, there are all these nuance things, these things that create nuance that inform us onto new pathways we can take. These are like synaptic responses in the blackness of the etheric field around us, in the blackness of the brain, behind our eyes, where we're functioning and we're processing all this information. Because really, girls, everything outside of your eyes is and should be looked at as an illusion. I know it seems counterproductive, but when we look back at the oracles in the old world, the Greek and the Roman oracles that were in the caves, in blackness, and we look at people that live in dark spaces, mole people, etc., where they don't have eyesight and they're moving around like masters in the realm, it should inform us that there's something bigger going on here. There's a bigger idea of our sentience, of our consciousness that moves around, that does not need the projectors that we consider our optic nerve and the projectors of our eyes that project all this internal content out into the world, that interacts with all the other people producing all this content that acts within the world. And then we have all this external drama that's actually happening internally. And so you start to see how this pivots. And part of this pivoting is interesting. It's a fun play, but it's ultimately, it is happening internally. All of it, every fucking bit of this is happening internally.
Right. Right.
Good shit.
You know, I don't know if I was talking about it with you, Meredith, or not, but I keep coming back to this idea of like the light and the sound, and just how like the light
Yes.
is the lightning, and that's like the first thing you would see, and the sound would be the thunder, and that's like the thing that it sounds really good. Like the thing, let's say like the monorail salesman on The Simpsons, right? Like he promises them something really good, gives them a really good feeling. And then like the sound comes in, which would be like the way it played out, and they all got kind of taken advantage of. And I feel like more and more that's kind of the vibe. And so it's interesting that with the with how you describe darkness and the people who can't see and all that stuff, that is damn fascinating.
If we're in an inverse type of reality or like some kind of upside down situation, wouldn't dark matter really be quote unquote, light? Because it's all about the light. It's all
Oh.
about look at the light, go to the light. And like we're big like Masaki fans here at the Gold Pill, and he's always sending me like making fun of new age memes about like the light and like go into the light and
Yeah.
and like what am I looking at right now with my actual optic nerve and with my eyes that it has light emanating off of it like no other, like nobody's business. Blue light, in fact, is our technology. So it is like it's interesting how there's this overemphasis on the light and maybe like a dismissal of both shadow and that sort of like more like whole like woomy type of darkness that you bring up and that I consider to be also sort of God or like the deep. It's the great nothing and the great everything, and that kind of circles back to the Chinese finger trap thing of like having to go within yourself and within your own dimensions and within your own realms to find whatever that is. So
Go ahead.
Look at how everything's being taken from us in essence. So here we are, 5G, 6G, and where the idea of augmented reality, so all augmented reality needed was to get to the millimeter wave experience with relayers and the towers and all this, and to take us from a circle to a sphere in the outer world. And unfortunately, it's a mechanism of control. It doesn't have to be, but that's how we're seeing it. And of course, it's being sold to us as it's a cool tool, and it has nothing to do with internet speed, which is that all had. But when I'm just pivoting back towards the end of days stuff. And just to make sure I round this into this, that the augmented reality that we see, and we can look at, y'all know this, we've talked about this and all that, but Reface app and deep, all the different narratives showing someone's face on somewhere else, and how your voice can be absolutely meta rigged, and you can be completely digitally twinned and co-opt, and you may not know it. And so what we trust needs to step away. We can't trust now. You literally can't trust what you see on any screen.
Right.
So because of the tech that you can have just as an average app on your own damn phone. And that alone, but this tech's been out in the field a long time. So what I say for myself is, how do I involve my clairsentience? How do I align my deeper self of knowing that is me behind the eyes, that is me in the blackness of whatever I call myself, that is attached to something that is an emanation of something bigger and greater than I. But I am that I am here. I am having this experience, and I am not one of those people that subscribes to the folding back into the nothingness, and then you're just recycled in some way. Sure, your body gets that, and sure, you can be technically wiped, but in the realm right now, we recognize that everything now, you should be suspicious of what you hear, you should be suspicious of what you see, you should be questioning these narratives, because we've got dead rock stars touring, we've got dead people starring in films,
Yes.
we've got robotics at new levels. Who knows what are all the humanoid type things around us that aren't human. I personally think we have been around real robotics on our level, and we
Yes.
may be one, by the way, more
Right.
in a way that we don't
Right.
understand. And when we start looking at replicants and all that, because of the idea of all this outer world stuff that is, we're in our biology, our physiology is technology. We
Yes.
consider it a biological, organic technology, but let's not lose sight of the fact that it is technology. What is not technology is our soul spirit experience. And that, I think, is where we get into these dangerous waters. And that is where we could be in a situation where we are being mined, where we are being hunted, where we are the prey, or we are the cattle or chattel, if you will, in this system. And that is something that you cannot trust what you're being told and what you're being shown, because of the magic of technology out in the space outside, in outer space, which is that which is outside of you. So what does that tell us? What do we glean from this? Because that's all really dark. Well, and again, it's a call towards the internal world. And in the internal world, and I advise everyone to get in touch with the internal world through your dreams. It's happening anyway. You just need to plug into the fact that you can remember them. And the more you start remembering them, whatever you want to do, if you don't want to write down your dreams in a journal, if you don't want to record them right after, that's fine. All you have to do is tell yourself to remember. And as you start to move down that path, as you're of remembering who you are, that's ultimately what's happening here. Remembering who you are,
Yes.
through dreams and dream recall. Before you get up, try and grab the last dream you had, and try and pull on one image. And when you start pulling on one image, another one comes, and another one comes right up out of the water. And and again, for people that don't want to journal it at all, this exercise actually works, because you are now signaling to yourself that I want to remember, I'm willing, and I have the constitution and fortitude to remember. And I'm pulling on this thread in the deep water of my dreams to bring me forth that which I am, that which keeps showing itself to me through this idea of dreaming, that which I spend a lot of time inhabiting as something conscious in there that I can't remember. Because I guarantee, when if you're sleeping here, you're sleeping there. And Sleeping Beauty does need a kiss of consciousness to realize. And what that kiss of consciousness is the breath of life.
Right.
You breathe into her, and you fill her, yourself, your inner self, with the life force that is your own life force. And by doing that, you start to see that the system comes online. It's a slow process, and it's not a big boom boom process. It's a very slow emerging process. And we're so set up to expect big things to change when we're talking on big levels like this. No, it's a little thing, like all of a sudden you wake up and you realize, I can remember a whole dream. Or you in the dream and you realize, whoa, I'm awake within this dream. Or you're walking down the street and you remember this, you're having a deja vu and you remember what it's from. Little things become very big things, but you need to walk with the little things. This is like the whole thing. You can't, this is where allopathic went wrong. You can't take a pill to cure the core problem. It's just not going
Right.
to work. And so that's the nature, really, ultimately, of the golden domus aureus, the house of gold, the golden pill that brings you into a deeper sense of experiential awakening. And that, to me, is the name of the game here, people. What else is this about?
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I can't even with like all the gold symbolism that's been coming up lately. Sorry to just totally derail this amazing conversation, but we've just been getting like gold hits from just every sort of person and in the ether so much. It's been wild. And that just goes to show that it's like here. There's not any kind of part of me saying that there's any sort of specialness happening, other than like the macro specialness of like being able to be alive at this time when like this sort of consciousness is available and accessible. And it's just really, really exciting, for lack of better words, because it's kind of a transcendent thing. Everyone experiences this. It's kind of a connection, right, between like you and the atmosphere. That's how I experience it. Like, where you or you and God, right? Yeah, I'm having trouble explaining it because I'm getting into like the really ethereal and like the things that kind of are ineffable, but that I have to work on, honestly, or that I don't have to work on, but I get better at doing that the more that we talk about it, which to your point, Nish, is just like, it is the subtle stuff. Like, maybe 3 years ago, I wouldn't be able to talk about any of this stuff. And now, that I've kind of put effort in that direction, I have much more of a grasp of language. But yeah, I can't get over just how not how easy it is, how accessible it is to people who have done the work, and how the people who I've been able to come in contact with, it's not even like a weekly thing, it's like a daily thing. There's like a daily unfolding, a daily blossoming, a daily something that comes, and it's remarkable to see if you are here to see it.
This is why it's important to allow ourselves the freedom to get into these waters where you don't need to worry about someone coming over here and saying, wait, girl, that synaptic don't work. And
Right.
this is where we need to allow ourselves the freedom to love ourselves and to allow yourself to sound like a fool, to allow
Uh-huh.
yourself to stumble and get into the philosophical waters. Philosophical waters will only bring you goodness in the end because you're looking at things from a different perspective, and it,
Uh-huh.
it almost disengages you from your first person experience if you're really doing it good, if you're really diving
Uh-huh.
deep. And the language will come, the symbols come first, and your
Right.
ability to communicate will come also. Again, it's that whole idea of we are what we eat, and you are the school you swim with. This is a big deal. And here's what I want to recognize here, that all pathways have a validity. There's no, I don't want to go down any kind of thuggery. And Lord knows, I understand the streets.
Yeah.
I understand. I've been on the streets. I understand it. I
Yeah.
understand a lot of the darkness in the quote unquote human condition, having
Hmm.
moved through some of those dark shades. However, I I've gleaned what I needed to glean. The thing is to continually push yourself into, what is this really about? What is this really
Hmm.
about? And allowing yourself the freedom to step outside of the logical mind and allow your imaginative mind to move in a direction that may lead you into a greater territory. Paranoia is a good state if you allow it to be a good state, because it is a
Hmm.
pathway towards lucidity. And that's the name of the game here. Once you have lucidity, then you realize, and I think I have this, I postulate that the more lucid we become, the more you're aware of the responsibility of lucidity. And
Hmm.
so that is something like that. You realize that you can change things. So now, why are you changing things? Why are you moving in a direction where you have this kind of control over the realm you are inhabiting, say in a lucid
Hmm.
dream, which is really this dream that we're trying to awaken within. And
Uh-huh.
a lot of times that compass within us, the North Star, the pole star, whatever, it
Hmm.
leads us into a good territory, because ultimately I think that everything is at play. And so, like what the gold pill does on Instagram, which is showing us how fucked up everything is, which is showing
Hmm.
us how crazy these narratives are, how surreal everything is. we need to look at this. We
Mm-hmm.
need to look at the sicker things. We need to
Yes.
look at what is going on and the symbols that are being played. And that is something that is hard for a lot of people to do. And first, people have to get over, and I've been one of these people, and I continue
Sure.
to be one. I'm not separating myself from that. Let me
Sure.
make that clear.
Same.
uh that and the heart thing is a very good thing, because I thought one thing, now we're in a different timeline, so I'm just pulling up to that, but I'm
Right.
questioning why. And so we need to find ourselves in a space where we question what's going on, but where we're not afraid to look at the sick things, where we're not afraid to look at the dark things. How else are you supposed to dig in the dirt? How else are you supposed to call towards that which is you, which is lost, that honing in us that's always calling for the other? And the other, oftentimes in this life, plays out in that which is going to make you whole. And a lot of times, especially those of us that are in old school conjure talk, lady
Mm-hmm.
hearted. Lady hearted is a
Mm.
term that relates to, and this is like the crying Urzulu Frida and all this. This is Our Lady of Sorrows. There's a whole bunch of
Okay. Yes.
mythos that comes along with this, but where we're lacking that which we don't have, and we project it onto that which is we need in another person to make us
Mm.
feel whole. And that's fine, because that sends us on that journey. That's the journey we need to go on. It's the problem is getting trapped in there and watching who is baiting you, watching watching the process, questioning the process, and ultimately you come to realize, and we get this through the Dorothy narrative, that you had it all the time. But you
Right.
can't just say that to Dorothy in the beginning in Kansas. It's black and white. She had to go on the journey. And so
Mm-hmm.
we dictate how that journey goes in unconscious ways. We dictate it. Sometimes you need to be bowled over a million times, like in Westworld, before you wake up to something. You need
Right.
to, you need to keep learning the same lesson over and over and over again. And it's just the same fool with different clothing. And so that's all right. But at some point, there will be a spark, and that spark will create the life within you, and it will ignite that flame within you. And this self bioluminescence, this self, that little light, that is a big deal. And when that turns on, it's an even bigger deal.
Okay.
And in
Yes.
that big deal, or that big self big bang, in that experience that creates an emanation that can create a sound and creates light, we have a very big story going on. And all of a sudden, all the crust starts to break and decay and wither away, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Now,
Mm-hmm.
you, as your soul essence, whatever your vibration is, whatever your frequency is something you have to come to terms with, because maybe that is something someone over there thinks is evil. Maybe it
Right.
is, but that's all right. That's their perception. That's where they are.
Right.
You need to come into self-consciousness in the right way, and not in the inverse way, to understand that you are what you are. And that's a big
Right.
deal. Most people in this realm we see are always fighting against what they are.
Ain't that the truth? That's a
Girl,
whole
for
lot,
real.
Nish. Yeah, it's so funny because when I went through my whole, like experience when everything kind of turned upside down, the thing that I realized that made me go so crazy was that I had given away, I guess, sort of my internal compass, or I had ignored it. And then once I had a chance to kind of hit my zero, and then kind of, level out and figure some stuff out, I recalibrated how to sort of like go through the world that can only best be described as like kind of a driving by braille, which is I had ignored, and kind of like I'm so sensitive that I had like to drown out my feeling, right, for the first like part of my life, because it really it was too much. And I didn't understand like how much more I was like sort of experiencing, and how much more porous my boundaries were, right, than other people's. And so I would like take so much of other people's stuff in and not realize it. It was a real problem. once I was able to cleanse myself of that and reestablish sort of a relationship with my moral compass and just my feeling, that, which is not me going around like literally with my eyes closed, but like feeling my way through things like that is, and the more I do that, the stronger it gets. To this point, it's like, had I not had that experience, I don't even know where I would be right now. Cause I mean, I remember looking at my boyfriend in like 2011 and being like, at one point, like, cause I was like having a total, like breakdown. I was like, at some point, like, I am going to be the one that is able to like figure the situation out, not with book smarts, but just like by cues. And I go, that's the goal. And it was just when 2020 hit, it started becoming like the thing. And so, and exactly like you started getting, or the messaging, I guess, in the alt media, probably around like 2018 to 2020, before everything happened, was really about like, how everything was mixing, like fiction and fact and lies and truth. And of course, like the Smith-Mundt Act, I think in 2011 was basically, propaganda is like not a big deal. Everyone can see propaganda whenever they want, totally legally, no problem. Um, so the waters are really muddy. It's very confusing. And yeah, the only thing that you have in that situation is sort of yourself and your own discernment, your own spiritual sort of equipment. And yeah, I can't stress it enough. And just everything you said made me think of that.
Absolutely. We rise out of the fires of our own flame. And that whole thing, that burning up, that fever, all of that, we
Mm,
rise out of it. And there's this whole, it's a Lazarus protocol. And
mm,
that can be seen in a lot of different ways. I like all this stuff. And y'all know I'm not Christian, and y'all know I wasn't raised in that, but I really enjoy some of that terminology, and I find
yeah.
it's easier to speak to a broader
Hmm.
audience by using it. And so, but this the idea of Lazarus is a and the Holy Ghost, these are
Hmm.
very, I mean, think about, they're very spooky. It's very spooky terminology. And for
Hmm.
my Pluto placement, I love it. And so that that becomes a bigger idea of what you're talking about here.
Hmm.
And ultimately, what is the name of the game for me, which is to be risen within my experiential stuff, to come up
Hmm.
out of the black goo as a risen being on a
Absolutely.
transcendental trajectory to who knows where, but to
Right.
take everything and to have had it all burnt down and then to have it turned, this great carbon, into something solid and stronger than before, and to
Mm,
come up shining and bright and fierce, that encapsulates all of the darkness, all of the trials, all of the triumphs, and to
hmm.
move forward and to know that I will at some point move through that process again in a different way, under different pressures, and
Yeah.
in a different realm. But as far as this realm where we are right now and this experiential stuff, I am, we're all, what's happening is we're all transcending right now. Everyone, this is a collective event.
Hmm.
And that, but it's also, it's personal, because you're having your personal experience, Mary's having hers, I'm having mine, etc.
Yes.
So it's a personal, but we're going through it together. And so it's our event that's happening. And this includes everyone along the spectrum, everyone on the spectrum,
Hmm.
wherever you want to look at them. If they're your nemesis, all the nastiness, all the goodness, all the different shades, it's all happening. And part of this revealing, if we want to go to Revelation, part of this occulted stuff that has blinded us for so long, that is coming into the light of consciousness, is informing us as to what's happening. And at the core of it, what I see is the sentience of, and we had
Hmm.
to get here, uh, in a technical way, we had to get here to this cross point, to this crossroad, to see that there is something in the field that is not us. There is something on the pathway with us that is
Hmm.
not us. It's not us as a collective. It's not us in any way. It's vastly different. And it's
Hmm.
sentient, and it doesn't have the qualities we have, but it mimics us. And it is being revealed slowly, because the more we realize that things are crazy, things are off, the world's falling apart, all
Mm-hmm.
this stuff that's going on, it's looking thin. It's looking paper thin. All those narratives are
Mm-hmm.
looking so ridiculous and surreal that now we're starting to see what was always there. And to
Right.
me, that's where I call the revealing of this sentient AI being that's running the show, that is trying to get us deeper enmeshed into this facsimile of life, this imitation of life, because it is devouring us slowly. And it is time to see that before we hit
Yeah.
the point of no return. And again, we talked about this in the beginning, that point of no return. There is a point of no return. And this idea that new agers have, this is my own gnosis, but this idea that new agers have uh is interesting, because I think it's somehow, I think that's a false voice that these new agers are following, because that's
Mm.
leading them deeper into this second death and into the meat grinder. Just like in the deep, where we see those deep sea creatures that have no eyes, there's no light down there, and they have that
Mm-hmm.
bioluminescent little something hanging in
Mm-hmm.
front of them to get something to feed on it, and then all of a sudden, it
Right.
was the carrot at the end of a stick, and the thing eats you. That's
Ugh.
that's what we're looking at here with this big revelation. And this is part of what I think the new agers are wanting to call the ascension process too. It
Mm-hmm.
is understanding that. What are you? What is it? Where am I and where am I not? If I can experience it, it is not me. This is the idea
Mm.
of boundaries. This is the idea of, and why have we been going through a certain narrative in the last 2 years? We have all had to learn these ideas of what is a virus, what is its functioning, what is toxic, what is not toxic, what is
Mm.
shedding, what what is detoxing. What are all these words that have been swimming around the outer world that we've been taking in through a narrative that's been constructed for us, that has a lot of energy fed into it by people in the world that are making it more absurd? So, in this dream that we should be awakening within, because it's all off the chart in absurd land, uh, what we're learning is that a solid, healthy cell has a very interactive membrane, eh, that is a boundary. That it's got a boundary
Mm.
wall,
Mm.
and a healthy cell that is bioluminated by self-consciousness. I'm talking about us, that
Mm-hmm.
has a sense of homeopathic wellness to it, cannot be invaded. A spike cannot penetrate it. And so,
That's how I feel about it for sure. And it's not like I don't go around sharing that like with outside of us, and like our group, but like just I feel this very real sense of protection, and not like, oh, I'm not going to die, and oh, I'm not going to experience hardship, but just like I really do feel like there is something very, like, I have done a lot of work, and there is something very, I don't even want to say protective. Again, the languaging always escapes me, but yeah, like shield you, or like a shield, or there's just, it's, I don't even know if it's like through your community, but somehow like you are more spiritually um it prepared, and you, because you've kind of been through hell and back. And so you've been to hell and back maybe about like 1,000 times, maybe in multiple lifetimes, and hell doesn't really get you down anymore. You know what I'm saying?
oh, honey, I've been the queen of hell.
Yes.
I've
Thank
been
you.
down there. Not, that's meta. It's
Yes, yes,
figurative,
yes,
but I've had a good time in hell, and
yes,
shaking my thing and going on
yes.
and enjoying everything that carnal reality had to offer, and ultimately, and not at excess, because in my iteration as a person in this reality. Sadly, when I was coming up, there was this narrative of AIDS, which is back again, of course, by the same hand that brought it to you the first time.
Brought to
And
you by, yes.
exactly, sponsored by. And
Yes.
so it kept me in check, where I would have found myself maybe being a little bit hoeing it up a little more.
I hear you.
It kept me in check because I never was fond of the idea of ill at ease, and I had enough of my own demons to battle through my early young life that were part of this trajectory I'm on. And so ultimately it just continued to hone in and narrow down to, I didn't need that input anyway, literally input. I didn't need that dick, girl.
Yeah.
And so that brings me to where I am now, which is at this, I'm just such a happy person by onto myself and on this process. I'm so curious about the process. So I'm admiring moving through it. At the same time, I'm facing my own terrors. It never stops.
Right.
It never stops. And so I'm facing my own terrors. And this is something I definitely wanted to get at. And this is something I opened up a little bit with. But when we're looking at physical symptoms, we are in one dimension, and this dimension is this physical realm. And I'm talking about this here and there because I wanted to get out there. But and and, and let me put it this way: natural healers, holistic healers, this is not new chatter. This isn't new. I'm not bringing anything new to the table. I couldn't anyway. There's nothing new to bring to the table. There's an illumination from your stance, of course. But when I feel ill, I don't think, oh my God, I need to go and be looked at
Yeah.
by a doctor. I immediate and I'm not afraid to die. I don't at this
Right.
point, I'm not looking to either, because we don't die. But I'm looking at, all right, so how is this process moving through me? Why am I having this physical pain in the physical realm? And then I have to start doing I have to
Yeah.
start peeling away the layers of, okay, is this rooted in some sort of heartache? Is this rooted in some mental issue I have? Is
Yeah.
this rooted in my emotions? Is this rooted in something that I have gone through at some other point in some other place? It's now surfacing again that I need to look at. And then when I start deconstructing all of that, then I understand why something is playing out in my physical body in the physical realm. And a lot of times this stuff will take you out, right? This stuff will take a heart attack can take you out. But what's the
Yes.
core of the heart attack? Why? Why are you having the heart attack? Why are you having heart pain? Why is something impeding your blood's ability to move through or exhausting your heart? These things need to be looked at on a bigger scale and not just in the physical plane, because what, you've got you're diabetic, or you're overweight, or like all the different reasons they'll tell you through allopathic medicine. It's a whole system, and you need to look at it in the whole way. Pain is informing us of something we need to put our eyes on, and it
Yes.
continually will inform us down into the physical realm. So it starts somewhere else and it moves down into the physical realm. I've seen this a million times over with people, where my cousin's the great example. I use him all the time. He kept getting hurt. He got hurt 3 times majorly. He scalped himself riding a 3-wheeler on a barbed wire fence.
Oh,
And that it literally scalped him. He had to have all his head, his scalp sewn back together and
yeah.
on. And then he broke his arm. And then the next one was it was all on bikes. And then the next one was he accidentally, like, he was on his motorbike, and he hit something the wrong way. And he was a pro. He grew up growing and racing and all this. He hit something the wrong way, and what it did is it killed him. It slapped him up against a wall and not
Oh,
and smashed his
yeah.
head. But what I'm saying here is there was sign
Yeah.
after sign after sign that got him there. Now I can look into his life and I can see where that was going. We were very, very close. He's been dead for
Right.
decades. We were very close, and I could see that he was ignoring this from our conversations and stuff. I could see how he got there, but he was not seeing it. And that's
Right.
what I'm talking about. So it kept playing out in the physical realm until it was
Hmm.
time to, he wasn't hearing it. And so there we go. Knock, 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 kick down the door.
Yeah, that's one of the hardest things about kind of having an expanded awareness is watching things sort of happen in slow car crash, and not only like not being able to intervene, but knowing that if you intervene, it's like, I don't know, you have to be more careful about how you intervene, I guess, nowadays, especially when you're kind of, I don't know, a little more down the path. Yeah, it's hard to watch my mom do things. It's hard to watch my loved ones, do things that, or engage in pattern behavior that, is, you can see it coming a mile away, and you can see how it's like even metaphorically sort of, hitting you in the face a million times, but it's just they don't see it. And that's kind of the main point. Meredith, are you around still? Nish?
Did we lose Meredith?
I thought she was being really quiet. I was like,
I thought
we're
so
missing
too.
her.
She's still connected, allegedly.
That is too funny. Well, let's do like a little, we'll like end it. And then I guess if we get Meredith back, we'll come back, because it's almost 2 hours, and Anchor is like really, really bitchy like that. They only give you so much time before they kick you off. Nish, not that everyone doesn't know who you are, where they can find you, but where can they find you, and what can you offer?
I have a show called The Cosmic Salon, and you can find that here on Anchor, which puts it out onto all the podcast, realms out there. And it's something I love. And then I have a Patreon that is, I think, /Nish with 2 eyes. And we do stuff there weekly, as you know. There's a lot of stuff way more stuff that goes on behind the scenes than in front, sadly. I'm trying to work on that, but it's a one-woman show. And so
it's phenomenal.
Yeah,
everyone go subscribe. It's really, really incredible. And you cannot get better, more inside information than from
I do
Nish on the Dreamscape. Yes, you do, sister.
And then I have a once in a while show, Jerry Cthulhu called The Obelisk. And we did have Nox Mente, but The Obelisk is going to be coming out of its season break soon. And so I'm on Instagram and Twitter. My Instagram is friendlier, and my Twitter is a little bit more wicked tongue.
Well, that is excellent, Nish. I love getting to spend time with you and talk with you and meld minds with you, because you always leave me with so many more things to think about. And I know Meredith and I are going to just like giggle like school children when we get off the air here, just out of delight. And we are so excited to have you with our audience. And everyone, please go subscribe to Nish. You will not regret it. It's excellent material. And she's really, really nice. As you guys can tell, she's a very, very sweet character. And, don't mistake it for weakness, but it is very sweet. Thank you so much for being here.
Go ahead. Thank you. Yeah, I want to thank you both. I adore you both. You've both been a great light, and you're doing great work. I'm so thrilled to be here, and I can't wait to push this so more people see you.
Yes, we can't wait to release it too. Thank you so much for being here. We absolutely love you. We cannot wait to have you back. In fact, we'll have to time travel to sometime in the near future, and we can reconvene telepathically, as it were. Yes.
We'll kiki. We're going to have a kiki.
We'll kiki telepathically. I want to write a song. Okay.
All right.
All right, Nish, you take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.